For me, I just did it out of fun because I just needed to cut 2-3 kilos.
These GLP-1 drugs are appetite suppressant. GLP-1s as a category is not new. They've been around for 15 years.
But with semaglutide injectable, that actually does lead to a weight loss that wasn't seen with any drug before that, which means you're talking of 10 to 15 kilograms of weight loss.
In India, only Ribelsis has been launched, and the current run rate this year is already 200 crores for Ribelsis.
But it's quite important to see those, not to take it like candy, or not to take it like an aspirin for headache.
10,000 rupees per month cost of treatment.
I mean, if you don't go out and do your exercise, correct, and you just depend on all these things to help you in life, then it is by definition a rich man's drug, right? My domestic help does not need it because he's working all the time.
By now, you would have guessed that today's episode of the Morning Brief is special for all those watching their weight. Yes, it is about the weight loss wonder drug, and chances are high that you would have heard about it. Either the molecule name semaglutide or its brand names Ribelsis, Ozempic or Wegovy. Essentially an anti-diabetic medicine, the drug has found a more universally appealing use case of losing significant weight.
People with type 2 diabetes are excited about the potential of once-weekly Ozempic.
The drug has changed the fortunes for its company Novo Nordisk, springing up billions of dollars of sales and catapulting it to become the most valuable company in Europe. And Elon Musk has a role to play in it. Responding to a tweet last year, Musk revealed that he had lost 30 pounds and was taking Ozempic to remain healthy and fit. Several Hollywood celebrities have also admitted taking the drug for losing weight and have added to the hype. So much so that Hollywood's worst kept secret made it to this year's Oscars.
You look great. Everybody looks so great. When I look around this room, I can't help but wonder, is Ozempic right for me?
In India, Novo Nordisk launched the drug last year in the oral tablet form under the brand name Ribelsis that has done reasonably well. But the more efficacious and popular injectable versions of semaglutide branded as Ozempic and Wegovy are not yet launched here. But that has not prevented the people who can afford to procure the injection from abroad. In fact, last week, Indian pharma company Dr. Reddy's Laboratories got permission to carry out bioequivalence studies of injectable semaglutide. So what does this mean for India that has a huge disease burden of diabetes and obesity? Is the hype around the drug all worth it? Are there any side effects? Is it affordable? And who should be taking it? For this, I speak to a host of experts on the episode today. We begin with the diabetic sharing his experience of taking semaglutide tablets. We also have Dr. Amrish Mittal, Chairman of Endocrinology and Diabetes at Max Healthcare, and Nitya Balasubramanian, Director at global asset management firm AB Bernstein. It's Thursday, 26th of October, and from the Economic Times, I'm your host Kiran Somvanshi, and together we unravel the whole hype around semaglutide. This is the Morning Brief.
I've been diabetic last 25 years, so I regularly visit my doctor. And once he said that, why don't you try semaglutide? Because when you take insulin, it does have an effect of increasing weight. So why don't you kind of compensate that by having this semaglutide, which will help you to reduce your appetite. But he said, there's no harm in trying this. If you can shave off 2-3 kilos by having this drug, why not?
That's a 53 years old diabetic who spoke to us on the condition of anonymity. He has started taking semaglutide tablets under doctor's prescription from April this year.
It does help to cut your appetite. Because of reduced eating, I guess I've lost about 2 or 3 kilos. I guess I was overweight about maybe 4 kilos or something, out of which I've already lost about half of that.
And what is the cost? Is
Yeah,
affordability a
actually,
challenge?
it's reasonably expensive. The cost comes to, I calculated about 350 rupees a day if you're having it daily.
One pill.
If you're having a pill, yeah. So it's around 300 to 350 rupees for a pill.
Okay. How long do you plan to take it?
What the doc told me is that, you should not really have it more than 2 years. Now I'm having it only once a week. And that too on the weeks where I'm out of town or traveling, I don't even have it. And I've seen that it has had an effect of reducing my appetite any case. So the effect does tend to last. My own personal belief is that I would hate my body to be dependent on a drug.
Right. Have you now made any conscious changes in your diet that now that you're eating less, you're making sure that what you eat is very, very healthy?
No, no, I eat everything. I don't believe in diet. So, so I eat because why not enjoy life at the same time? So the point is that you have whatever you want to have, and just have less of it.
So, are you afraid that once you stop this drug, you will gain back those kilos and also that appetite?
That remains to be seen. But I'm very active in my exercise as well, and just eating less. And I think that's really the best option.
Has your doctor warned you of any side effects or anything that you have to be kind of watchful of?
No, he just said that's why he started me on 3 mg, and he said you take it for 2 weeks, even up to a month, and if you have zero side effects, then you can, happily go up to 7 mg, right? And then it's
Yeah.
your choice if you want to increase it to 14 or at 7, you're fine. I have had zero side effects even at 14. I've had zero
Nice.
side effects throughout the journey. Zero.
Is your diabetes under control?
Diabetes has
medicine.
always been under control. That is regardless of this. And having been diabetic for the last 2 decades, my own practical experience tells me that if you cannot control your weight, you are not going to control your diabetes. And I think weight reduction is paramount for anyone who's diabetic. For me, I just did it out of fun because I just needed to cut 2-3 kilos. So it was just at the margin that I tried it out.
And I'm just curious that, those 2-3 kilos you would have lost anyway with some exercise or joining some sport.
No,
Why
actually,
take the drug?
it's. I mean, it's always the last 2-3 kilos that's the most difficult in life. If you're starting with a weight of 100 kilos, okay, somebody who's clearly overweight, okay, that person may find that the first 5-10 kilos is easy. I mean, it's relatively easier. Then as you go down, and you're down to then 80 and 70 and all, then even that extra 500 grams gets difficult. Then it gets more and more difficult because you're trying to lose the last bit. I mean, then you should have a seriously restricted diet. Okay, but I don't do that. I don't just live on vegetables, raw vegetables and all that. I like to live my life the way I've always lived it. So have everything. Have your drink, go out for a meal, go to a restaurant, do everything. Okay, so I do my exercise. I do at the same time. I even work out an hour a day. So I do that, and I live my life the way I always lived. I don't believe in changing that. So if this incrementally helps me to reduce that extra 2 kilos, why not?
This is interesting. Here is this patient who isn't overweight but is able to afford the drug that is officially approved in India. But there are people here who are procuring the more efficacious version, that is the injectable form of the drug, from outside India since it is not yet available here. This prompted me to turn to diabetologist Dr. Amrish Mittal to know the medical take on this rising trend among the affluent class to reverse obesity. Thank you, Dr. Mittal, and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Hi, happy to be here.
I'm sure you have many patients coming to you asking for, is there a cure for obesity? So, do you recommend semaglutide?
Well, that's a loaded question. Okay. So, yes, obesity is very important, and everyone's struggling with obesity. It's actually the mother of all modern non communicable diseases. The struggle to lose weight, as you know, the battle of the bulge, as you call it, is a major problem. And therefore, the use of drugs that help in treating obesity is very important. Unfortunately, the drug history so far of obesity treatments has been pretty dismal. Semaglutide is a new class of drugs. Actually, the class is not new. We've been using this class of drugs for 15 years, maybe. But semaglutide is actually helping people to lose weight with or without diabetes by acting through the GLP-1 pathway to reduce blood sugar as well as control weight. So I think that's the way it is. So do I recommend? Yes, there would be patients who are struggling with weight, who are genuinely trying, or who are at a level of weight where you know it's not going to work. Whatever they might do, they'll lose a few kilograms, but they need to lose a little bit more. Then semaglutide is prescribed. Of course, we only prescribe oral semaglutide here because that's the only one available and licensed and approved.
So tell me, doctor, is it the wonder drug that it is touted to be in terms of results?
What semaglutide and subsequent molecules have done, they've exploited this to a different level so that the degree, the extent of weight loss is very significant. So, for example, the predecessors of semaglutide, you would lose maybe, couple of kilograms, 3 kilograms, 4 kilograms sometimes. But with semaglutide injectable, which is the one you hear about most often, which is commonly available as Ozempic and Wegovy in the West, that actually does lead to a weight loss that wasn't seen with any drug before that, which means you're talking of 10 to 15 kilograms of weight loss. So, in that sense, it is a game changer.
Like you mentioned, oral semaglutide is what is clinically available, legally available. What about injectables? Do you see patients procuring that from outside and using it because of better efficacy?
So, the requests for prescriptions or advice about usage of injectable semaglutide and some other molecules, similar molecules, is very common among the affluent classes and those who are well connected or have families abroad or friends abroad. They are very keen. And in fact, while we discuss with our patients, we don't really prescribe because how can we prescribe? It's not even available officially in India. But when patient asks that I want to try this and I can arrange it, there's no problem, then we don't discourage that either because the drug is efficacious. And if the patient can safely get it from somewhere and cost is not an issue for the person, then I'm okay with prescribing it or at least advising it. But it's not prescribed by me as a choice.
Is there any ballpark figure in terms of percentage of patients that doctors recommend this to, like 5%, 10%, just to understand that typically how popular is it or how many patients are taking it?
See, my view will be skewed in this because I'm specialist level in a metropolitan city. Most of my patients can afford it. So I'll have a skewed perspective. My prescription rates in my unit of semaglutide oral are pretty high. We already have, at last count, more than 600, and this is like a couple of months ago, patients who are using this.
But what about those who don't even come to the doctors and they take it, because they saw a friend at a party looking very slim and now they want to do it. So what about that? What precautions they should take?
So drugs are prescription drugs and over-the-counter drugs, right? So there are prescription drugs for a reason. So similarly, there is no way that drugs like semaglutide should be over-the-counter drug or will ever be. I don't think the authorities are that foolish or that incompetent to say this can be an OTC. Okay. So if you really think you have access to it and you think you need it, you first go to your doctor to figure out if you need it or not. Are you a candidate for it or not? And if you are a candidate for it, are there any contraindications in your case? Are there any reasons not to use it in your case? That also should be answered. So you have to look at those aspects. It's quite important to see those, not to take it like candy, or not to take it like an aspirin for headache. Please don't do that because it's a medical drug. It has numerous actions in the human body. A doctor has to run some tests. He has to put you on track. And of course, in addition to all that, you need to be in the criteria. Some people want to take it just because they are 1 or 2 kg overweight. Even that I've seen. The other thing is that there are others who will just, as you very rightly said, will take it because a friend took it and lost some weight. So they have to understand not everyone loses the same amount of weight. Some may barely lose any weight. All those things have to be discussed with the doctor. What potential side effects should they look at? What are the long term impacts, whatever is known so far of this medication? So it should be after due discussion, deliberation, and the consent and advice of their doctor. Only then they should consider using such molecules, not as a fashionable thing.
But what are the known scientific side effects medically which doctors know and caution patients? What are those?
So the side effects of these molecules are usually evident. It's not hidden. Side effects are not common, but evident side effects are nausea is almost a very high proportion, one fourth to one third people, in some studies even higher figures in our own data, they get nausea. So the nausea can be mild, it can be moderate even then, but if it's severe nausea, especially if it's with vomiting, then you can maybe go through it once or twice, but you can't have repeated vomitings and severe nausea and have such a poor quality of life. Allergies and all are not common, but GI, gastrointestinal effects are common. Some people lose a lot of weight, and some people tend to shrink with these medicines. And that really means that they are losing muscle. Okay, because fat loss alone will doesn't give that shrinking kind of look. Little bit maybe, but so some patients, some persons, some individuals who use these molecules can also lose muscle. Now, the degree of muscle loss is of course much less than the fat, but it's not zero. It's hard to put a figure to it, but 20 to 30% of the weight loss can be muscle. In one study, even 40% of weight loss can be was muscle. So what does that mean? That it means that if you're losing 10 kilograms, you've lost 2 to 3 kilograms of muscle. So now, in the Indian context, this is very important because Indians have low muscle mass anyway. We have what is, I always say, Indians are sarcopenic intrinsically. We have low muscle mass for whatever reasons. So even if you lose a little bit of that muscle, it may turn out to be very significant. Because if these molecules actually promote, frailty and connected complications, risk of falling, if you're using it in people who are 65, 70, 75 years of age, and they're losing muscle, and they actually become frail and prone to fractures, prone to falling, all those things. So we have to look at that also. Drugs like semaglutide are part of an obesity program. They are not standalone magic treatments for obesity. And why do I say that? You must follow a diet strictly when you're on these drugs, but you also must exercise. You have to get used to eating a healthy or an anti-obesity or weight-losing diet. And that is because once you go off the medication, if you go back to your earlier diets, then it's a challenge. So using these drugs is a part of obesity management and not the only thing in obesity management.
Yeah, like we cannot use the drug as if like I'm really hogging and eating everything that I want and just popping the pill, just thinking that okay, this will make me lose weight. Yeah.
Yes.
So that was one. And the other thing was, as you said, that these are initially anti-diabetic medicines. So do they still continue to be recommended for treating diabetes, or that agenda has kind of shifted?
No. They are used worldwide primarily for treating diabetes. So the popularity and the media popularity because of weight loss has skyrocketed. Let me qualify this, however, that things are changing rapidly. The NHS, for example, in the UK has approved use of these drugs. And there are several other, like the FDA in the US has also approved. So what I'm saying is that gradually doctors, maybe sometimes under pressure from patients and society, may prescribe them more and more in just obesity. And maybe they're on the way to primarily becoming weight loss agents. But remember, losing weight is a very important part of diabetes management. But yes, the primary usage, in my opinion, should be for those with diabetes. They should get priority over those who are just trying to lose weight, because there's also a short supply of these agents.
Right. So as a doctor treating diabetes patients, how do you see in a country which has the largest population of diabetics in the world, what kind of health outcomes this drug can produce?
See, I think the main thing will be the access. How many people will be able to use these agents? So the public health impact of such agents can only be when we can use them for large segments of our population, which is not going to happen in a hurry, right? So yes, for a certain rarefied upper stratum of our population, they'll be very useful drugs, no question about that. But I don't think that they will be able to combat the obesity epidemic in India, which really can only be combated by prevention, by making sure that we have healthy options in our diet, by making sure children are exercising regularly. You have to start at that stage. That's the correct path for the government and the authorities to invest in, rather than fancy drugs. Fancy drugs will be available for those who are sick and for those who can afford them. I don't think these kind of drugs can have any impact on the larger sort of canvas of obesity.
Right. And now with, Dr. Reddy is getting an approval to conduct bioequivalent study on this drug before it can be launched, especially the injectable part of it. Do you think once it gets launched in India, its popularity and also the abuse will kind of increase further?
I think so, for sure. If the drug can be made in India and bioequivalent studies show that it is good enough, then cost will come down drastically and ease of access will be there. Ease of access is excellent, very good in many ways, but I do have a concern, I have a fear actually of even more abuse. It's not that it's only the rich who will abuse it, because it'll be accessible to more people, the more will abuse it. So, and sometimes even less awareness, So I think that definitely is a question mark. But I suppose if the authorities and the government tighten sort of their systems to ensure that there is no fake prescribing of this molecule, then it'll be a very, very welcome thing if it can be made in India and it can be cheaper.
Thanks to the increased efficacy and the hype, weight loss drugs have emerged to become premium business for the pharma industry. And it's just not semaglutide. There is a new drug on the block, tirzepatide, where data has shown to result in weight loss of up to 22%, almost rivaling bariatric surgery. American drug major Eli Lilly has rolled out tirzepatide under the brand name Mounjaro. I spoke to Nitya Balasubramanian from AB Bernstein on how's the opportunity shaping up on the business side. Nitya has financial interest in Cipla and Lupin.
So it is shaping up to be a pretty substantial market. If you look at Novo's Semaglutide, the three brands that they have, Ozempic, Rybelsus, and Wegovy, together they're already tracking pretty close to $20 billion. And I think the expectation for both Novo and Lilly's tirzepatide put together is around $100 billion by 2030 or so. And if you look at the reported revenues from these drugs, it's already quite substantial. First half reported sales of these products are Ozempic is 6 billion, Rybelsus is 1.2 billion, Wegovy is 1.8 billion. These are all Novo. And if you look at Mounjaro from Lilly, that's $1.5 billion. And that's the first half sales. And growth is fantastic. I think the full year number will be more than double of what I've mentioned.
Are they facing any problem catering to the demand?
Both Novo and Lilly seem to be running into issues in terms of supply. They've been caught unawares with the extent of the demand that they're seeing in the market. So they're struggling, especially with fill finish capacities. That I'm assuming will be one of the reasons why they don't launch these drugs in India as quickly as we would like them to. In an article, Novo's head of India had mentioned that they're thinking about 2026 as when they could bring Wegovy to the market.
How is the situation in India?
The India situation is different from the global situation. What we see is Rybelsus is available. The injectable version, which is Ozempic, is not available. And Wegovy, which is the injection for the obesity indication, that's also not available in India. The market sizes in India are actually much lower. GLP-1s remain a much smaller share of the total market, single-digit percentage. Though I think Rybelsus, which was launched in India some 2.5 years ago, is doing substantially well. The current run rate this year is already 200 crores for Rybelsus.
Right.
Before Ribelsis, all the other GLP-1 options were injectables. India typically tends to prefer orals over injectables. And I think in India, it entirely depend on the price point.
And what are the price points are we talking about when we talk about Indian market?
So in India, only Ribelsis has been launched, and that is somewhere in the zip code of 10,000 rupees per month cost of treatment. Globally, it's close to $1,000 per month. I think we need more inputs on what the price point could be. Come 2026, maybe there are, branded generic copies available, at which point of time, much more affordable price point should prevail after 2026. And I can fully imagine the market expanding exponentially after that, right? So it entirely depends on the price point in India.
And given this whole news of Dr. Reddy's seeking to go for bioequivalence studies for the injectable semaglutide, how do you see this move for Dr. Reddy's per se, for the Indian markets per se?
It's still not entirely clear when they will be able to launch. We did check the IP databases that are available. Novo has a granted patent on semaglutide or GLP-1s, which should protect them until 2026 at least. So it's unclear, therefore, as to if Dr. Reddy's will be allowed to launch before that.
Right.
Novo, we know globally has a little bit of an issue with fill and finish. It is a product that's in shortage, even in US and Europe. That's probably the reason why they haven't launched it in India. I don't know if that gives leeway, wriggle room for Dr. Reddy's to launch that product.
The other thing was about the whole touted impact of this drug on the other sectors. So how do you see that panning out?
It's actually been fantastic tracking the second order and third order impacts of the data that we've seen from GLP-1s. Globally, medtech stocks have corrected quite substantially because people now expect that there will be fewer patients on insulins, and therefore continuous glucose monitoring devices are expected to now see a shrinking market. There is actually now data that you can actually wean patients away from the bolus insulin that they need to take after every meal if you actually give them GLP-1s as well. And therefore, insulin pump makers are connecting. There are assumptions that incidence of sleep apnea will come down. So device makers that make the CPAP machines, they're correcting. There is again talk that your knee replacement, joint and hip replacement requirement will come down because, people are less obese. So again, those suppliers, those medtech suppliers are correcting. And even beyond the healthcare world, I think there's been ramifications that have been felt in food industry, any junk food exposed names they have corrected because these GLP-1 drugs are appetite suppressants. So they reduce your cravings, and therefore people assume that you're not buying as many chips and pizzas and burgers anymore, right? So these, again, stocks exposed to these kind of products have also corrected.
Right. Interesting. It's like a disruptor in the market.
Yes. See, I think the pushback I get from some investors is that when something's too good to be true, then maybe they're too good to be true, right? But honestly, GLP-1s, as I mentioned before, have been around for a long time. So the naysayers are expecting that some hitherto unknown side effect might show up and therefore derail the growth. But GLP-1s, as I mentioned, have been used by patients for a very long time now. And so far, so good. So I'm fairly optimistic about the growth of this category.
So the market analysts are fairly optimistic about the promise of weight loss drugs. The doctors are cautious and the patients quite eager to seek a fast solution for shedding their extra kilos. And why not? After all, winning over obesity, the root cause of so many diseases, seems to be an ultimate victory for mankind and its quest for survival. With companies lining up new, highly efficacious weight loss drugs, there'll be a lot more incremental innovation that we will get to see. For instance, health experts in the US are dubbing tirzepatide to be the King Kong in comparison with the still mighty gorilla of semaglutide. This could speed up the adoption and penetration of these drugs. But there are certain caveats to be aware of. Firstly, the increased demand has led to rising incidence of fake weight loss drugs floating in the market. There are reports of fake Ozempic found in over a dozen countries including the UK, Germany, Egypt and Russia. The World Health Organization has warned that such counterfeit drugs pose significant health risks. Secondly, semaglutide and similar drugs are still only a few years old, and long-term side effects are likely to emerge in due course of time. In the coming years, more data would surface on aspects like how high cost is making it prohibitive to continue taking medication, and how there is a relapse in weight on discontinuing the treatment. And finally, one has to always be watchful of hype, especially in the case of medical drugs. There have been past instances of wonder drugs touted to be a panacea only to fail miserably. Pfizer's Chantix was one such drug, rolled out in 2006 for cessation of smoking amidst much hype as a death knell for cigarettes. But it was later found to have psychiatric side effects such as depression, hallucinations, paranoia, and even suicidal thoughts. So while it may seem as if we have cracked the cure for obesity, the truth could be entirely different. It's literally a wait and watch. So that's it for today. This is Kiran Somanchi from the Economic Times, and you are listening all about the wonder drug semaglutide only on the Morning Brief. A special thank you to our guests Dr. Ambrish Mittal and Nitya Balasubramanian for sharing their amazing insights, and to the diabetes patient for sharing his experience. This episode was brought to you by sound editor Amrit Reggie and producer Sumit Pandey. TMB's executive producers Anupriya Nair, Anirban Chaudhary and Arijit Burman. Thank you for listening. And if you like this episode, do spread the word. A new episode of the Morning Brief podcast drops every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. Don't miss it. It streams on Amazon Prime Music, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts. And of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. Have a wonderful day. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.